Welcome, sports fans. You are watching the Sports Carolina Monthly Triple Play. My name is Desmond Johnson.
And I'm Kyle Butler, and we have a trifecta of topics dominating the sports world this week.
The NBA Finals started this week between the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat, two teams that me and Kyle predicted would probably make it to the Finals. Who do you think is going to win this matchup going into this?
Well, it's really a tough call, and you know, these teams, there's an interesting dynamic in play here because you have the Dallas Mavericks, big star Dirk Nowitzki, who really causes a lot of matchup problems, and then you have the big three on the side of the Miami Heat, and that's a dynamic that the Mavericks haven't had to deal with so far. I like the Mavericks here, and I'll tell you why, mainly because the road that they took to get to the finals was much more difficult than that taken by the Heat.
True.
Miami got to take on the Philadelphia 76ers, who only qualified because you have to have 8 teams in the playoffs.
That's a good point.
They then got to face a Boston team, certainly, you know, won the title a couple years ago, were in the finals last year, but that team just was not the same after the Kendrick Perkins trade at mid-season. And then they got the Chicago Bulls, and I give Derrick Rose a lot of credit for trying, but he did not get a lot of help from his friends, and Chicago just really looked overmatched the whole time. Dallas, on the other hand, had to take on the defending champions, the Los Angeles Lakers, made it look easy taking out Kobe and company.
Too easy.
And then, that's true, and then got to play arguably the best player going in the playoffs in Kevin Durant, who was just tearing it up in the first couple of rounds, and they took them out in 5. So Dallas, they look very strong. Miami is going to be tough, but I like the Mavericks. Will it go 6 or 7? Hard to say. I'll say Dallas in 6.
Okay. I'm going to go with the Heat. I've been with the Heat since day one. I felt like if they could get it together in time once they got to the playoffs, that there wasn't a team constructed to guard them. And that's usually the #1 thing that happens when you're playing the Miami Heat. You'll get one game to kind of surprise them. They'll take you for granted. Then after that, they just kind of wear you down. You can't guard LeBron James and Dwayne Wade at the same time, double team. And if you do figure out a way to do that, Chris Bosh is going to burn you for 30. I think the Heat's they're going to exploit their quickness on defense. I think that it could possibly go 7, which would be great for the NBA. But from the track record of both teams, I would not be surprised if it ends in 5 going to Miami. All this talk about the NBA Finals actually brings up an excellent point. There's been conversation going on all week long about which superstar needs this championship more, Dirk Nowitzki or LeBron James? LeBron James has been in the league for about 7 years now. Dirk's been in the league for going on 12. Both started very young. Both have legacies to think about. Kyle, who do you think should be the one that takes this title home this year?
Well, for both of these guys to really cement their legacy, they have to take an NBA championship. But for me, it's got to be Dirk Nowitzki. As you said, he's been in the league longer. He's been the face of the Dallas Mavericks for the past 10, 11 years. This is his best chance to win the title. He had an opportunity 5 years ago against this same Miami Heat team. They weren't able to get it done. But Dirk and Dallas play in the West. That's where the big boys play in the NBA. You have to deal with teams like the Lakers, the Spurs, even the Thunder, even the Grizzlies. So it's very hard. Just ask the Phoenix Suns.
Right.
It's very hard to win in the West. LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh are set up for a long run. That was really the thought process in creating this team, a team that's going to be good and a team that could potentially be a dynasty. Those guys are locked in for the next half-dozen years. They're in the Eastern Conference. Much easier to make it to the finals in the East, especially with the Celtics getting old. So while a second finals loss certainly does put a damper on LeBron James's legacy, this is Dirk's time. He's got to get it done right now.
I agree, and a lot of it for me has to do with, I feel like Dirk is now playing with a timer in his head. Like he knows that his career is coming down to the back end. His point guard is going to be 39 next year. He's playing with a lot of talent on his team, but as you know in the NBA, it's very hard to keep all that talent in one spot. He's playing, in my opinion, the best basketball of his career. Having said that, I think that LeBron would actually benefit more from winning a championship this season, and I base it on the celebration they had when they signed. When they grouped together in Miami and they threw that big celebration with just those 3 guys, because at the time there were only 3 on the team, you know, and they didn't talk about just winning a championship or 2 or 3. They talked about multiple championships, and to that effect, LeBron's window's closing too. He'll be 27 next year, and usually after you cross over 30 in the NBA is when you start going on your downward slope too. Jordan won most of his at 30 going by, but he had somebody with him and Scottie Pippen to help out with that, as well as good rebounding and good coaching. They've got the pieces in place, but they want to win multiple championships, and he wants to be in that same level of discussion as Michael Jordan. They've got to start winning, and I think they really need to start winning now. We'll come back to the Jordan LeBron conversation here in just a bit.
That's absolutely true in our parting shot. But next, let's switch gears a little bit to some college football, where it was not the best of weeks for the Ohio State University. Certainly, we had heard some rumors since this past November of problems within the program. It appears that the problems actually spawned back for much of the past decade, a decade that was headed by head coach Jim Tressel. Tressel put up a tremendous run, 106 wins and a national championship, but that run ended yesterday when he resigned as coach of the Buckeyes. Des, this was not a good week for Ohio State.
Yeah, Kyle, something smells bad with this whole thing, and I thought that it smelled bad when they first announced this in December, that the 5 players were going to not be suspended for the bowl game, but be suspended for the 5 games the next season, and that the players had made an agreement with the school to return next season to fulfill that suspension. That doesn't make any sense. Like, I didn't understand why that was even going on in the first place. Now come to find out that Tressel was holding these emails and correspondence for almost a full season before we even got to December, and now you're starting to peel away the onion. You're really starting to see what's been going on, not just at Ohio State, but at a lot of major college programs. We just went through it here with the University of North Carolina and their football program. There's so many different boosters and alumni and hangers-on and agents and things that are out there, and now you have a 24-hour news cycle, and you've got Twitter and Facebook, and there's no way to keep a secret. So people are trying to do old-school tactics to keep players around, and they can't do that anymore because the players more than likely are going to go out and reveal that information anyway.
And you mentioned North Carolina, and that's a good example of just the disaster that's going on right now in college football. I will say to North Carolina's credit, and they really sacrificed what could have been a tremendous ACC winning season. The Heels end up 7-5. They could have easily, with the defense they had, gone 11-1 and played in a major bowl game, but they decided to make sure and do their own investigations and see what came from it. It really hurt them. Ohio State chose not to do that and then chose to play in the bowl game, but was it really worth it? Because they're not going to be able to keep that Sugar Bowl title, I can't imagine.
Now, for our closing shots today, one of the main conversations that's been going on in the sports world for the past couple of days is based off of comments from Chicago Bulls legend Scottie Pippen. I didn't find a problem with his words. I understood what he was trying to say. I know the media has stretched it into this whole, Jordan can never be, there can be anyone better than him, LeBron's not as good, he hasn't won anything. I don't think that's what Pippen was trying to say. Really, if you think about it, LeBron James is just a larger version of Michael Jordan with the same quickness.
LeBron has a ways to go. How many championships does Michael Jordan have?
6.
How many championships does Kobe Bryant have?
5.
Let's get back to this conversation when LeBron James gets at least to 3 and maybe to 4. And he'll have his chance.
Right.
Again, as we said in the opening segment, Miami is set up for the long haul. LeBron's going to make a lot more finals appearances unless something ridiculous happens. But right now, there's not much of a discussion. It's still Michael Jordan. You can at least make a case for Kobe Bryant. I still take Michael Jordan. But at least Kobe's close. And, he's headed towards the back portion of his career.
And I think he should be in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But right now, LeBron, stick to your commercials and your decisions. You're a great player, but he's not MJ. He's not 23. He's not 23, literally.
Right.
Not anymore.
But I do want to say this. Make sure you check out the latest edition of Sports Carolina Monthly on newsstands everywhere in the Triad right now. If you're not able to find one, go to www.sportscarolinamonthly.com. Click on the top banner, and it'll take you to a free PDF version of the magazine. You can actually read this month's issue or previous issues as well. Also, come and befriend us on Facebook. Soon we'll have our own Twitter and YouTube channels for your enjoyment for the program as well.
And we'd like to thank Rick and Prolific Park for the use of this fine basketball court today to film this episode of The Triple Play. And that wraps it up for today's show.